Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching the third season of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's episode, we are going to learn how to overcome, get through whatever word you want to use there, life's problems, whether our life's challenges. We'll say that word, life's challenges, whether that's professional or personal. And we'll explain how a lot of times it starts with you. And here to educate me and you, we have Linda Shively, like lively, on the podcast. How are you, Linda?
I'm fantastic. It's so great to be here to talk about our mindset and how we overcome challenges.
Yes. And I cannot wait to hear what you have to say because I feel like we live in a world where the onus is never on us. It's always on someone else. It's always someone else's fault. So the fact that you said a lot of times it starts with me, it starts with the man in the mirror, like Michael Jackson would say. I can't wait to hear this. So before we jump into the podcast, Linda, where in the world are you?
I am on an island. I live on an island in California. It's called Alameda. It's in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I love saying that I live on an island because not that many people can say that.
It's not that many people that can say that. And it's such a conversation starter. Like, I just had like 10 questions pop in my head about that.
I just walked out to the shoreline before we started today to get some fresh air, and it's amazing.
Oh my goodness. I feel like you're the luckiest person in the world. Just from my point of view, the luckiest person in the world. Okay, so Linda, let's talk about your personal journey and the challenges that you have faced along the way.
Back in 2005, I had to make a really tough decision. I had
Okay.
to figure out, it was the middle of December, and I had to figure out how to escape an abusive marriage with my severely handicapped 3-year-old daughter, Jessica. And Jessica, she, bright eyed, happy little girl, loves books, loves stickers, loves going to preschool. And the just brings so much joy to the world around her. She also has a condition called spinal muscular atrophy, which is a progressive neuromuscular disorder. And at the time, there were no treatments. And her little teeny tiny index finger would allow her to zoom around in her power chair and use her communication device and get her way because she always wanted to do her thing. And I knew that staying in that environment was not healthy for her and it was not healthy for me. But I didn't know what I was going to do. How was I going to get out? How was I going to take care of her?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought her home from preschool and I looked at her nurse and I said, you pack all of her medical equipment. I'm going to pack her clothes and her toys. And as soon as she wakes up from her nap, we're going to escape. So there's a flurry of activity while she's napping. And as soon as she wakes up, we load the van and we're off. 2 weeks later, 2 days after Christmas, I'm sitting in the pediatric intensive care unit at the foot of her bed, talking with the head of pediatric intensive care. He came in on his day off. He should have been with his family skiing. And he was there talking to me. And he said, she's not going to make it.
What?
I said, what do you mean? Do you mean I have to tell you to pull the plug, tell you to kill my daughter? And just at that moment, beep, 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 all the alarms go off. Code blue, code blue. Everybody's rushing in, ready to revive her. And he was so calm. And he just waved his hand. And everybody just stopped. And we all surrounded her bed. And I picked up Jessica one last time. And I could just feel that life left in her. And then it was gone. And I could have stayed in that dark place. But I remembered what a friend of mine had told me when she was first diagnosed. And she said, you can never change what happens to you. You can only change how you deal with it. And it was a journey to figure out how to come back from that place where I basically lost everything. I'd lost my marriage, I'd lost the home I was living in, I lost my daughter, I lost my reason for being. And I did a tremendous amount of work on myself, did the counseling, did the coaching, and got to a place where I recognized that untangling that abuse was actually more complicated and harder than the grief, which I know for any parent, they're like the worst nightmare is to lose your child. But she didn't do anything wrong. And untangling that mess has taken a lot of work. And now I'm able to help people from that place of not just learning about something, but from living it and experiencing it and being able to say that it is possible to get through it. And everybody's on their own journey, but I so passionate about helping people take whatever might have happened in the past and help them use it as a springboard to have the best future that they can have.
Okay, so I was not expecting that turn in your story. So I need to kind of gather myself here a little bit, Linda. Um, so
Well,
okay,
let me just share a little bit more because I
thank
know
you.
it's one of these things that grief is a weird topic because our society doesn't deal with it. We don't know how to talk about it. We don't know what to do with it. And when somebody shares something, we're like, what do I do? I don't know. And what, how could I possibly say anything? And I've had people say this to me. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to bring up Jessica because I don't want to make you upset. And I kind of chuckle inside now because I say, you think I forgot? It's like, it's not like you forget these things. And actually talking about her is something that brings me joy. Now, I know some people, everybody has their own experience, but I love talking about her. And I love the sharing the insights that I gained from being her mom. And I'm still her mom, and she's
Right.
still around. And, that twinkle in her eye when she would be mischievous and just be like, I'm going to do this. And you can't stop me because I'm in a 300-pound power chair and I'm just going to go. and we loved going to the library to read because that was something she had a passion for. And when we'd go down the street and walk, and sometimes it would be sunny. She'd be driving her power chair and the sun would get in her eyes and she'd close her eyes and still drive her power chair. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
How do you rationalize with a 3-year-old? You can't.
you
And
can.
so, and so had to be very creative and luckily found some sunglasses that I could put around her head that would not get pushed off by her headrest so that she could be safe while she was driving around. And the insights that there's something magical about kids. Now, I know this wasn't the direction of the podcast you were thinking it would go,
This
but
is the
but
exact direction it needs to go.
but
Yes.
kids love kids, and we're taught at a young age whatever the adults believe, but kids can accept, kids can love. And the first day Jessica came to her playgroup with a suction machine, which helped clear her trach, turn it on, and I don't know if you've been to the dentist, that thing
Yes.
that, so it sounds like that, but it's even louder. And you know everybody turned and looked. We turned this thing on, and everybody looks. Second time we turned it on, nobody cared. And it's that getting used to something, and people, they loved her chair. I mean, they loved the fact that she could be with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they'd see other people, adults in, a power chair, they'd run up to them and say, "Oh, my friend has a power chair like that," and it wasn't a scary thing for them. And so I think that is a gift that she gave to the world, is just, even if it was just for the few kids in her playgroup, to give an awareness of what's possible. And I had that gift when I was a teenager, working in the adapted PE department at my
Mm-hmm.
local community college. And I met amazing people that happened to have issues with their body, let's just say that. And
Okay.
like they were in a wheelchair, or they couldn't move in the way that I was able to move. And I recognized that they were still humans, and I was amazed. I was like, wait a minute, these guys are in wheelchairs and they're playing competitive tennis? What? How is
Yes.
that possible? And it expanded my mind to recognize that every person is a person, no matter what their body or mind might be, that might be different than ours. And it helped me. Little did I know that it was going to help me with my child, but it's something that I think I'm really passionate about.
Linda, first of all, thank you for that extended question because it allowed me time to breathe and gather myself so that I can ask my questions. But before I get to the question, I want to point out that one thing that Jessica did for the kids in her classroom was normalize
Exactly.
seeing people in a wheelchair, and they were able to do it at 1 years old, 2 years old, 3 years old, whereas for you, it didn't become that normalized until you became an adult and you were working in that space. So if anything, and from the sounds of it, Jessica left such an amazing impact. She left that will be lifelong in those children's lives, that, oh, they're in a wheelchair, that's normal, that's nothing. They have a suction that's really loud, oh, that's nothing. So she normalized that for them. And that isn't that what we all want to do in our lives and in the lives of our children? Make it normalized, because not everyone looks the same and gets around the same and sounds the same. Everyone is different. Everyone is diverse. I know that's a hot word right now, but everyone is diverse, and it's what makes our community and our neighborhoods and our schools so beautiful, because no one looks the same.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to go back to the abusive husband. Now, one of the things that when you and I spoke, you said a lot of the times think challenges start with us. So in abusive, and I'm just speaking for in your situation. I know everyone's situation is different,
Mhm.
especially when it's abuse. Do you think that challenge started with you, or did it start with your husband?
That is a really good question. And there's a lot of self blame when abuse is happening, because you think it's all about you. So in that case, there's, I don't want to say that it's the victim's fault. And I don't want to say that I was a victim, but there's a belief that happens, and it could be inflicted by somebody else, and it
Okay.
often is, that you just don't believe that you're worth having anything better than what you have. And so everything is kind of, oh, well, you're not, nobody else is going to love you. Nobody else is going to put up with, whatever it is. And
Yes.
so when you start to believe those lies, then it messes with your own mind. And so whether I picked it up in, actually, I had a really interesting conversation with this about with some colleagues and friends who had also been through abusive situations.
Okay.
And One came from an absolutely picture perfect family. Parents, total loving, amazing family. And she ended up in like horrible situations, partly because she believed everybody was amazing like her parents were. And
Oh,
so she didn't
wow.
see it. And then other people were in situations where like maybe there was something, and so that they just thought that was normal. And so it's like everybody, it doesn't really matter what your background is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of how you interpret and what faith you have in humanity
Yes.
that sometimes can come back and bite you. And so if it's like if you have a tendency to believe that people are good, you believe people are good.
Yes.
And if they show you otherwise, you're like, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. And how you
That doesn't line up
justify
with what
it.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. And so you attempt to justify, well, wait, maybe they're doing it this way. And so it's insidious. And even when you start to recognize it, then it's like, but how do I untangle it? And how do I shift it? And we have voices that are in our heads. And I talk about this a lot. And it's like you get to choose your voices. But if you don't recognize that the voices, whether they're outside of you or within
Mhm.
you, if you don't recognize that sometimes those inside voices aren't your own voices, they might be the voice of a parent. They might be the voice of a critical teacher. They might be the voice of a childhood bully. And if you don't recognize that that's not actually your voice, you think it's you telling you that, oh, you're not good enough. And, all of the, I talk about joy stealing dragons that suck the joy out of your life. And
Yeah.
if you don't deal with it, and one of them is No Good Nancy, who just, it's like, no matter what you do, you're not good enough. And she just like, you can't do that. And even when you succeed, she's like, you could have done it better. And that just constant negativity doesn't serve you. And one of my clients that I helped with this, she is an 8-figure business owner who was shifting roles and didn't believe, like, how do I lead in a situation where I've always been the president, now I'm the chair of the board? How do I
Mm.
shift and lead from the side? And it's different role, and helping her step into the belief and the confidence that she could do it. and
Right.
and being able to do that successfully and negotiate powerfully and all of those skills that sometimes we tell ourselves we can't do, and it you can begin to untangle that.
Right.
So
Now, Linda, you have a successful life and business, I guess we can call it life and business coaching company, lindashively.com. How has embracing your personal challenges and your personal struggles helped you exceed and excel in life and specifically in your business?
if I didn't embrace the challenges, then I would be sucked under by them. And it's like mindset isn't something that you just check a box. It's like, okay, I'm done with that. It's a constant piece, because wherever we are, we've figured out how to get to that point. Either we know, like, everybody is wherever they are at this moment, either by accident or by purpose. If you want to get somewhere else, you have to do something about it, because
Mm,
that good old phrase, what got you here won't get you there,
right.
it's true. You have to get your mindset different, because the mindset for an entrepreneur who's just starting is very different than a 6-figure entrepreneur, is very different than a 7-figure entrepreneur,
Yes.
etc. And even if you're about the same level but you're trying something new, I can imagine, when you first started your podcast, it was like, okay, I haven't done this before. Now you're not at the beginning of your podcast, so
Right.
you may have different challenges that you're encountering, and so it's like always up leveling that mindset. And that is something that's why I have coaches, so that I can coach better, because if I didn't have coaches, it would, it's like, I yeah, everybody needs a
Yeah,
coach.
everybody.
And sometimes more than one. Sometimes you need it for a specific area. And that has helped me enhance my ability to lead and my ability to run my company. And that continual work on myself is the best way to grow my business. And that's something I learned very early on, is the fastest way to personal growth is start your own business.
Really?
Because all your bleep comes up.
Yeah. All right, Linda Shively, like lively. Okay. So before we move on, we're going to start talking about like specifically some tangible ways to overcome life challenges. But I just want to touch on something that you spoke about early on in the podcast, when you said that people didn't want to ask you about Jessica because they didn't want to, make you remember. And I have lost someone very close to me, and I encountered the same thing, like with with my friends and stuff. They would never bring it up and never ask questions. And then one of my friends was like, same thing with your friend. I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want you to think about it. But you are correct, Linda. You think about it every day. And what happens when you bring it up or you ask questions? For me, it was like a sense of joy and a sense of relief, because I can share these thoughts that I'm thinking, I can share these feelings that I'm feeling. So, for everyone that's listening to Linda on this podcast, if someone in your life, a friend or family, has lost something, if you learn nothing else in this podcast, but you're going to learn a lot, ask them about the person that passed away. It does not hurt their feelings or make them think about it more, because they're always thinking about it anyway. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because this is one of my missions, is to really help people have a different conversation about grief, because it is so, it's like that. What do you ask? How do you say? Sometimes you don't have to ask anything. You can just just be with the person,
Yes.
and or ask, if you're the person grieving, as challenging as it is, it's almost like you have to teach people how to treat you or
You.
what to do. And so whether it's telling them, these are the topics that I love to talk about, it's like,
Mhm.
ask me about, these questions, or get the other person, if they remember a story, because I find I'll talk to people that remember Jessica, and I don't have as many in my life now. I know a lot more people that never got a chance to meet her, but those that did, it's like, tell me a story that you remember about Jessica.
That's
And
great.
and it's like, oh, thank you, because they see it from a different perspective. And or especially if it's somebody who's older, they had life apart from you, and you didn't know about their work life, their, who they were friends with, their group, whatever it was. That's it's kind of a strange thing, but I kind of like funerals or memorial services,
Mhm.
because you get a more full picture of the person, because it's like, you know them in the way that you know them, but
Yes.
there's so many things that they do. So
Right. And it's so many, and I always use the word levels, but it's so many levels to people, that, I know you, Linda, on this specific level, but so many
yeah,
other people know you on different levels, that still you, just a different level. So
that
that's why I think about it. But you're right. I never thought about that as far as the funeral, that you get to see and learn about people in different areas, and you walk away like, I never even knew that about that person. So that's, yeah, I never thought about it like that, but that is absolutely correct. Okay, so let's talk about overcoming life challenges. And I think, Linda, that a lot of people, especially in America, do not like overcoming painful situations or hurtful situations, angry situations. And I think, and some data backs it up, that America being the most overly medicated country is because we don't want to feel those emotions. We don't want to feel that pain. And it also, and data backs it up, we're one of the countries with the highest drug abuse. So we're talking like the illegal drugs in, and I know prescription drugs, once you use them outside how they're supposed to be used, become illegal drugs. But the illegal drugs as well, the prescription drugs, we lead other countries in this because we don't want to feel the pain, the sadness, the sorrow, the anger in life's challenges.
So what I've learned is
Mhm.
if you actually feel the feelings, which I know a lot of people don't want to feel, and it can be really awful if you feel it really only lasts a couple minutes. I mean, science has shown that I think it's like 90 seconds ish is
Okay.
about how long an emotion lasts if you fully feel it. So it may be a really not great 90 seconds, but then it will pass. The challenge that we have as humans is we tend to attach a story to that emotion. And when we attach a story to the emotion, it keeps going. And we keep that emotion much longer than that 90 seconds. And so allowing yourself to fully feel an emotion
Hmm.
allows you to pass it through. And that's something that we're not taught, that we don't learn. And sometimes you're like, but I can't. And you like grasp on to whatever that story is. And talking about living a better story, you get to tell the story that you want to tell.
Yes.
Because if you keep that story going, and I've believe me, I'm sure we've all talked to somebody who has that story that just keeps going round and round and round, no matter what
Yes.
the context is, they're going to talk about that, how awful it was, that blah, 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 blah. Of course, they're going to want to like numb out from it. And we do all sorts of things to numb out from it. And sometimes I don't know the statistics. That's not my area of expertise to study the drugs being used, but people are focused on doing different activities. Maybe they'll avoid, it could even be that they're avoiding the project that really is going to make the difference in their world.
Hmm.
And it could apply in their businesses, it could apply in their relationships. Like there's something that needs to be discussed,
Right.
there's something that needs to be handled, and instead of actually calmly discussing it, they go off and do all these other things and avoid it, and then that problem continues to get bigger. And that's something, if we don't actually address it, then it's like that bubbling monster that just keeps growing and growing and growing, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So
Right.
figure out like what's actually going on. And I find when I'm working with my clients, it's like get to the root of whatever it is,
Hmm.
because we're so good at doing like the weed whacking, like, oh, everything, doesn't it look pretty, everything is amazing, my life is great, la 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 la,
Yes.
and then everything comes back. And it's like, no no no,
I'm
pull the
still
root.
here. I'm still here. I have not left. It's still here.
Yeah, and so that I think is the direction to work, is how do you process through those emotions safely for yourself, and then be able to get through them and change that story.
Hmm.
Because anything that happens, you get to define the meaning.
Absolutely.
Like
And
I
it
could,
sounds
I mean,
like you're talking about kind of your mind shift in
mhm.
this situation, which really leads me directly into my next question. What, and I know that it's completely different for for everyone. But what is the mind shift that needs to take place to move past challenges in business or in life? What is that? I know some people liken it to flipping on a switch, something like that. But of course, it's not that easy. But people use that analogy all the time.
First, I think there's an awareness that
Okay.
has to, because like you said, I mean, if you use the analogy of flipping a switch, you have to recognize that there is a switch.
Exactly.
Because if you don't know there's a switch, then you're gonna be like walking around in the dark and like, how do I turn the light on? And when you recognize that there is a switch, then if you can't figure out how to flip it yourself, then get help, get support to help yourself recognize how to switch it. Because sometimes it's an easy shift. And
Hmm.
I think that's something a lot of people think, oh, change, scary, and and it's like it doesn't have to be scary. Think about if you drive to the grocery store and you have a direction to go to the grocery store and you take that route every time, and somebody says, hey, Crystal, I got a shortcut for you. Go this way and you'll get there faster. And you'll be like, cool. And you go that way. Now, there may be days that you take the other way because you're used to it.
Right.
But it's not hard to go the other direction, but you just didn't know it before.
And one of the things that I found, and of course I'm taking what you said literal, but like if I'm driving, and we're all creatures of habit, so you go the same way all the time. But if you just take a detour every now and then, like you see new stuff, you experience different things. And I feel like it's the same thing in life and in business. If you try something new or you try something different, you might just luck up and see something that you've never seen or experienced something that you've never experienced before.
Right. Which is why sometimes having a community where there are people from different types of businesses,
Oh yeah.
because we're all in our bubble of like knowing how to do what we do. But if you get somebody that does something completely different, they're going to say, hey, what about this? Have you tried that? And getting that new insight. And the same thing, I mean, that's also a perspective of a coach, because, like we're inside our bottle. We can't read the
Yes.
label that's on the outside of the bottle. And
Yes.
somebody else, it's like, you're talking to your friend or family member and they're discussing whatever issues going on. And you're like, why don't you just do this? It's like, it seems so obvious from the outside, but when you're in your own way, you forget that, oh, there's the path
Other
could be,
options.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. How can people turn setbacks? And I feel like, if you have a certain age, and I don't have a number for that age, but I feel like if you are of a certain age, you've had a setback in your life at some point in time. How can people turn setbacks into stepping stones into success?
Being aware that it's possible and recognizing it and looking for the gifts in whatever those setbacks, challenges, whatever word you want to use. What can you learn from it? Because it may not be fun going through it, but there's always a lesson. And recognizing what that lesson is, it might simply be, don't do that.
Mhm.
Like just don't do that again.
Yes.
And it may be, okay, I'm recognizing that, life is short and I want to take advantage of it. Maybe I recognize that people have different opportunities and trying something new. Whatever the challenge is, it's like, oh, okay, I'm making this to be a lot bigger than it is, no matter how big it might be. I mean, we just in California, there were all the fires in Southern
Right.
California, and thousands of people lost their homes. when you have a complete loss like that, what is the benefit? I mean, you're like, benefit? How can you possibly benefit from that? And it's a starting over place. Now, again, people could stay stuck in that abuse, but it's like, oh, I get to choose what I bring into my life now. I get to start with what really matters. Now, there are, I had that when I left. It's like I didn't have everything. What do I actually need? What is something that really matters? And how do I put that into my life?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like every decision leads to the next decision. And the first decision is, what are you thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
And if your mindset is on a negative loop, everything you see is going to be negative. And if your mindset is positive, you're going to start to see everything as positive. Even the things that you're like, how could the world could that be positive? But it can be that way. And which is why I love gratitude and practicing gratitude. And they've done studies where if you write out 3 things that you're grateful for a week, 6 months later, you're happier than people who didn't do that.
What?
And I know. And it's like, wait, how is that possible? And so,
Yeah.
so just imagine if you keep doing it.
Yes.
And one of the things, there's a part of our brain, it's called the reticular activating system. And
That's a big word.
it's a big word. But what it means is it's kind of the awareness. So let's say you're going to go buy a new car and you're going to buy, I don't know, a white Camry. Suddenly you start seeing white Camrys
It's so
everywhere.
true.
And so the same thing, it's like if you're focused on something negative, you see that everywhere. And if you start focusing on what you're grateful for, then you start seeing things to be grateful for that you wouldn't notice. Or like during the day, you're like, oh, I see that gorgeous flower. I can put that on my gratitude journal tonight. I saw a pretty flower. And I had friends who the wife was going through a cancer treatment and was on not doing well. But every day they went for a walk and they would look at what the flowers looked like and they would take mental pictures of the different things that they saw. And it's like, oh, is this the best one for today? Is this and they would like, oh no, this is the best one for
Oh, I
today.
love
Oh yeah.
that.
And just looking at our world differently and looking for the good, looking for the positive can help shift any situation. And so it all, like we started this conversation, it all starts inside our heads.
Yes.
Because if you're not thinking the way that's going to help you, nothing's going to work.
Nothing. And I would like to add on, Linda, just a sentence here that whenever you're getting ready to make that decision, that mind shift, whether it's in a positive direction, in a grateful direction, or in a negative direction, that first choice, that first decision is always going to be the hardest. Whichever way you decide to go, the very first choice, the very first decision will always be the hardest. And then from there, little bit by little bit, it gets a little easier. Again, negative or positive, it gets a little easier. It gets a little easier to make those continuing decisions and choices.
And it's a practice. It's
It's a
not,
practice.
it's just like, you get hungry, you need to eat. Does that mean you never have to eat again? No.
Not
It's
at
like
all.
it's the same thing. You have to practice, what are you eating? What are you thinking? And it's like, oh, I ate that really like I shouldn't have eaten kind of meal. All right, so the next meal you eat healthier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice. It's not like, oh, I thought a bad thought, I'm going to be doomed for life. No, think a better thought. and
Exactly.
and it's that constant challenge and constant change and opportunity that you have to make those choices. And it's like you can be in the middle of one of those downward spirals of thought and go, wait, no, stop. I
Snap
want
yourself right back
to
in.
snap yourself out and like change the direction of it.
Yes. And I just want to, just my disclaimer for this podcast, Linda, and you are doing amazing on here. Absolutely amazing. That the stuff that Linda is talking about, the stuff that we're talking about is not an overnight thing. This is stuff that you're actually going to have to put work into and effort into, and it's going to take time. But if you continue with it, I feel like you'll be successful. That's my disclaimer for this podcast. So you're going to have to put some work in, some energy in, some effort and some time to make these mind shifts and to make these changes, whether that's your life or in your business. So what about confidence? So when people have challenges, the confidence takes a huge blow. How does someone rebuild their confidence after going through challenges, whether that's major or minor? I feel like I know what you're going to say on this, but I want to hear what you're going to say.
Well, there are many ways to rebuild your confidence. One, if you're having challenges rebuilding your confidence on your own, seek out support. Get a coach, get a counselor, get somebody that can be on your side and be your cheerleader. If you can't be that inner cheerleader for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you need that outside support. And getting that support is so important. Having the confidence, sometimes it's because we all have confidence. We just may forget that we have confidence, or we have confidence in one area of our life, but we forget that it also applies in another area of life. Think about it. If you wear shoes that you tie, are you confident in tying your shoes by this point in your
Exactly.
life? You got it. It's just there may be something new that you're not confident in because you haven't done it as many times as you've tied your shoes. So sometimes it takes practice to get that confidence.
Yes. You know what I thought you was going to say? I thought you were going to talk about the mind shift again and making
Well,
those choices and making, yeah.
I mean, there is a mind shift, but it's also recognizing there are certain things. I mean, believe me, I've had this happen where I'm trying something new in my business or trying something new, and it's like, like, I just started taking Zumba classes, and and
Ooh.
and I'm doing a lot more thinking than exercising.
You can do it, Linda. I'm going to coach you
Yeah.
through it. You can do it.
But it's like, I've been taking West Coast Swing, and the first day I went to West Coast Swing, I was like, cool, I love West Coast Swing. I actually had never done West Coast Swing. It was East Coast Swing that I knew. And I was like, ooh, I have no idea what I'm doing. But now that I've been doing it and taking classes and taking lessons, I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. Am I the best dancer on the floor? No. Am I having fun? Yes. Do people enjoy dancing with me because I'm having fun? Yes.
Yeah.
And so, did I have that confidence when I started? No. But it takes practice. So, whether it's and I'm doing that, one, because I love to dance, and
Uh-huh.
two, because it's that opportunity to figure out something new and recognize that we're not always good at something when we start, and helping to see the growth. And so sometimes pick anything in your life and do that. I have a friend who became an amazing cook because he had the choice after his wife died of either doing takeout or learning to cook. And he had 3 kids, and it was like, okay, I'm going to learn to cook. And now it's like, he'll show pictures on Facebook. It's like all these amazing, beautiful meals and have these huge
Wow.
parties. And so you have a choice. It's like, no matter what is happening, what are you going to do with that? And yes, there may be times where you need to take the shortcut and you need to just do something to get through it. But sometimes taking small steps and getting a little bit better, you're going to get better at it. And
I
so,
love that story about the husband because I was thinking one of the worst things that could possibly happen in a husband's life, losing their wife or losing their spouse. But look what came out of it. He probably never ever would have learned to cook or been that intentional about it had unfortunately his wife passed away.
right. Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to business specifically because you are a life and business coach. What is the biggest business challenge that you have faced and how did you overcome it?
You know what I'm going to say. Mindset.
Mindset, winner, winner.
It's always about the mindset
Yes.
because whatever the challenge is, it's like, how do I approach it? And when I've gotten caught in my own way, things don't work the way I want them to.
Right.
And so recognizing the quicker I can catch that and take steps to adjust it, whether it's call a coach and be like, hey, help, or
Yes.
meditate for a little bit, go for a walk, do something to shift the energy, come back to it, because stewing in that unhealthy mindset
Mm-hmm.
is not good for anybody. And so that is, and it's, I wish I could say, oh, I never have a mindset challenge anymore. La, 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 la. That's baloney.
You would be living a perfect life.
Yeah, nobody, it's like anybody that tells that to you, you're like, yeah, I don't believe
Really?
you.
Yeah.
And it's how quickly can you catch it and how can you change it? And it's like sometimes it is getting that outside perspective because in that moment, you may not have the wisdom or insight to be able to move through it. But that definitely has been a challenge for me. And so it's like recognizing that it is, which is why I have the coaches to help me with it.
What
Because
about adaptability, Linda? How does being able to adapt help in business whenever you're facing challenges?
flexibility, adaptability is so important because if something isn't working, it's kind of like, oh, I'm just going to continue to bang my head against a wall.
Yeah.
It's like, how is that helping? It's not. And so recognizing what to shift and how to shift it, but recognizing that a shift is happening. And we talked a little bit, you were talking about studies. What are the metrics? What are you doing? Like, if you're
Yes.
like, oh, nothing is working. Okay, well, how do you know nothing is working? Have you tried everything? And it's like,
Yes.
no, I've made 3 calls and they didn't say yes. Okay, well, maybe you need to make more calls. Maybe you need to talk to the right person. So it's like identifying what are the actions that are being taken and how many of them and
Mhm.
in what way, and finding one thing to adjust and then seeing if that works. Test and adjust, test and adjust. Because if you, oh, none of it's working, throw it all out, try something new, how do you know? Maybe you were this close to the right answer. And so being very on top of how you're making the changes can really benefit in your business.
Would you say, Linda, that one of the harder parts in that and the, flexibility, the adaptability is realizing that you need to make a change, is realizing that you need to be flexible in this area because most people, and they call them old school, most people like this is working, it's been working for 10, 15 years. Why do I need to change now? Have
Oh,
that mentality.
you mean like that company Blockbuster? The-
Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's a great example of how not changing and everything is working and that didn't change. They didn't adapt. And look at what happened to Netflix now. I mean,
Yes.
who would have thought that this company that mailed DVDs in the mail
Exactly.
is now going to be a production company, and you know,
Yes.
so there are
Yeah.
so many different ways that can go. It's recognizing what is happening.
Hmm.
Are you adaptable enough? Now, not every company is going to be either a Netflix or a Blockbuster.
Right.
However, what are the things that your community, your clients, your people need? Are you paying attention to that? Because if you're not paying attention to that, then they may no longer need what you're offering, because maybe you need to adjust how you deliver what you're delivering. Maybe you need totally new skills. Depends on the industry, depends on what you're doing. Technology, it's changing probably in the sentence that I'm speaking. you
Yes, it
know,
is.
and so what worked 5 years ago, 6 months ago, yesterday is not the same thing that's what's going to work tomorrow. And so you have to keep learning and growing and adapting. Fundamental structure, that's up to you and how you want to run your business. But if you don't look at what is going on, you could be left behind.
And you could be just like Blockbuster. I completely forgot about them. Thank you so much for saying that word and reminding me of Blockbuster and the Blockbuster days. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about before we got on here, Linda, is sometimes the challenges and the situations that we face, it starts with us. It starts with the individual. So first of all, explain that to me, how, sometimes with the challenges and the situations that we find ourselves in start with us. And then my second question on that is, why do you believe that personal growth is the foundation for business success? So acknowledging that, okay, something with me is wrong or off, but that will lead to growth in another situation, because even saying it out loud sounds weird. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm hosting the podcast, and it still sounds weird.
Well, if we are not operating at our best,
Hmm.
then what we produce is not at our best. I mean, that's a simple way of saying it. And so it's not that we're broken. We're who we are. And we're going to do the best we can at whatever it is that we do, which may be absolutely fabulous.
Hmm.
If something isn't working the way we want it to, okay, is it because we're missing some knowledge? We're missing some, you know, actual tangible something? Is it that we're not doing enough, not taking the actions? Or are we not listening and caring about the people around us? Or are our systems broken? All of those, and those are just like quick
Right.
pieces, but there's so many things that might not be working. But if we're aware of all of those pieces, then we can recognize how to change. But if we can't even see that, that's what I'm saying, in ourselves. And if we're working on perfection, we're trying to get everything perfect before we even start anything. That's often a trait that begins with us. Or if we're afraid of judgment, afraid of what people are going to think about how we're doing something, that can impact how we operate. If we're always so overwhelmed with so many things to do, then we're not going to get anything done, because it's like, what do I do first?
Right.
So all of these, I have, they're the dragons that I referred to earlier. There's the second guessing Sally, who's always like, well, which way do I go? What decision do I make? And if you're not definitive in a decision, then you're not actually going anywhere. And so each of these pieces affects us. And so that's what I mean when I say it starts with you. Because
Hmm.
if I've yet to meet somebody who doesn't have anything going on inside that isn't affecting them.
Right. Right. And let
Yeah.
me just point out here really quick. I love your dragons. I love your dragons. They're all excellent. And I love their names. I love their names. How can what piece of advice, Linda, would you give someone that's dealing with imposter syndrome? Which I feel like we've started hearing this word a lot here lately, maybe in the last 3 years, 2 years. We've been hearing that word a lot.
Well, imposter syndrome, I often refer to her in a different way as like no good Nancy. I think
Hmm.
that is kind of the dragon that relates closest to the imposter syndrome. And that, like, who am I to do that? And I've noticed this imposter syndrome, men don't get it. Or
Really?
men don't, and when I say get it, I mean they don't comprehend it in the
Mhm.
way, they don't seem to be affected by it as much as women. At least in my anecdotal studies. I haven't done a scientific study around it. It just seems like the idea that somebody wouldn't have that confidence and wouldn't believe in themselves, it's like, what do you, because if you get an application or a job description, for example, if a man feels that they have 60% of it, they'll apply. A woman often feels like she needs 120% of it to even apply. And
Yes.
that's something that we've been taught in society. It's like, no, 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 you have to be really good if you're a woman to be able to do that. And so that belief that even though everything that any other candidate is going to know, there's that, oh no, not good enough. And battling that internal societally placed internal battle is a challenge with the imposter syndrome, because often people who feel like they're not good enough are actually much better than 99.9% of the
Yes.
people.
Yes.
But they somehow have been told, whether society or subtly or in messaging somewhere, that they're not, or that, or to downplay how good they really are. Because it's like, oh, we're not supposed to boast about ourselves and tell how amazing we are. We're supposed to, kind of put it down. And so it's like, it is a stretch. Like, what do you do? How do you do that? The piece is actually doing it and getting the confidence in showing people that you actually do know what you're doing and doing those actions. Because the imposter syndrome, the biggest challenge with it is it holds you back. So you don't actually do it.
Because you
And
think you can't do
because
it.
you think you can. And
Yes.
so again, it's all a mind game. Now, like I said, some of that mind game comes from outside sources and it gets implanted and we start to believe it. And
Hmm.
so it's undoing that and recognizing that you get to define yourself the way you want to. And earlier you were asking about personal growth. That's why I'm such an advocate for it, because as you get better at being you, being human, it is, you start showing up in a better way. And I'm not saying that however you're showing up before is bad. It's just like more aligned, more who you really are, and having that confidence from like, yeah, I know this, I got this.
Do
And we're
you
always,
feel like you showed up better, more confident after the dissolution of your marriage and even after the death of Jessica?
initially, not so much.
Right.
I mean, it took a while to get there. But yes, because I recognized what I was able to get through and recognized what the challenges were so that I could identify it. And so now when I see things happening, I'm much more aware of what's going on. Do things still affect me? Of course.
Hmm.
But it's recognizing that and being able to know, hey, I've lived through that. I've been able to get
Yes.
to where I am today, there's no way. I mean, at that time, like
Yes.
I mean, I was like, I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now at that point. And that's sometimes a good reflection is where are you now? If you were 10 years younger, 20 years younger, would that version of you be doing what you're doing today? And it's like, yeah, no.
Wow. That is so true. That
you
is
know,
so true.
and
Yes.
how do we get to where we are because of the experiences in our life. And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe there's a setback right now, or maybe this is happening right now, but look at everything else that we've dealt with.
Yeah. Yes. I wish, Linda, that I had the applause machine because I would be clapping this entire interview. I would be clapping this entire interview. Listen, and I have two more questions and then I'm gonna let you go. I promise, Linda. I have not shaken my head, and I know the people on Apple Podcast, you can't see me shaking my head, but I have not shaken my head, yes, in agreement so much in a podcast ever. And this is my third season. I don't think I've laughed so much in a podcast, and this is my third season ever. I mean, this podcast has been so great for me. It's been so great for me. I just need to say it.
Well, I appreciate that, and laughter is great for you. I mean, it's the best medicine, right?
Yes,
And you don't actually need humor or comedy to laugh, and
you
that's
do
that's
not. You
and
do
that's
not. A lot of times you're just learning. You're just
yeah.
learning and it happens. Okay, so my last two questions for you, Linda. You have been in this space of coaching life and business for a while now. What is your intention in this space?
Fantastic question. Being able to really inspire people to be the best version of themselves, because I know that I've been working with the people that I've had the opportunity to work with up until now, and I know it's a bigger message that needs to go beyond. And so my mission is to continue sharing that and letting people know that they are amazing and how they can continue to be that way.
Excellent. And I'm so glad that you chose our platform to help continue to share that message. Such a wonderful message it is. And my final question for you, Miss Linda, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
I actually have two people that I think would be fantastic on this podcast. The first is Ranger Keelak. He walked all the way across the United States.
No.
And yes,
What?
and yes, he's a friend of mine and just so inspirational. And I can't wait for you to meet him. I think you'll have a great time talking to him. And the other is Angel Marie Monticelli. And she is like, she brings energy, keeps energy in the room when there are events. She makes sure that people are paying attention, and she holds the space in a way that nobody else I know can do, and just has this effervescence about her. And I think she would be another fabulous guest for you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to speak to both of them. Those are going to be excellent episodes. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Just continue to share the joy.
Thank you. I will do that. I will absolutely do that. And to my audience, to my listeners whom I love so much, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Linda's podcast on YouTube Podcast and Apple Podcast. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.